Are you ready for more fall decor DIYs? Let's get into it. Hello my friends, I'm Ellie Lee with Ellie Lee Designs, and I hope that today you are ready for another budget-friendly fall decor inspirational video. Now I don't know about you, but when I think about how much I've spent in the past on holiday decor, it just hurts. It really adds up, and at the same time, you aren't getting that custom piece that's made just for you. But there's a solution to that, my friends. Today I'm going to be showing you how to use budget-friendly pieces from the Dollar Tree and more to make beautiful high-end decor pieces at a fraction of the cost. And without any further ado, let's get started. For my first project, I started with these clip-on and decorative pumpkin picks from the Dollar Tree. I removed the clips and little trunks from the clip-on pumpkins and attached them to the sticks of my picks so that I could easily paint them. Next, I used my Americana acrylic paint in the color Burnt Orange to paint 4 of my pumpkins. Then I used the color Spice Pumpkin to paint the remaining 3 pumpkins. I originally planned to use these as part of a wreath that I was going to make, but as is the case with most of my DIY adventures, this project took a completely different turn. Does that ever happen to any of you? If yes, leave me an exclamation mark in the comment section. Next, I used the burnt orange color on my pumpkin spice colored pumpkins and my pumpkin spice color on my burnt orange colored pumpkins to give my pumpkins a more realistic look to them. Whew, now that's a lot of pumpkin. I then used the color Apricot to add some spots and more texture, and the color Grass Green by Folk Art to add a little more contrast to 3 of my pumpkins. Once they were all dry, I removed them from the sticks and placed the trunks back on the original pumpkins. Then I used my hot glue gun to glue 2 of my pumpkins together. I actually ended up stacking 3, but you'll see that at the end. I then mixed some of my ArtMinds Fresh Earth color with my Apple Barrel Candy Caramel to create a color for one of the wooden crates I had bought at the Dollar Tree. I used a hula grass skirt from the Dollar Tree to stuff the inside of my crate and cut out the words Pumpkin Patch Open Daily using my Cricut Joy. If you'd like to see a project using the Cricut Joy, let me know in the comment section below. Once I had the words on my crate, I realized that I really wasn't in love with how my crate turned out. It was too one-dimensional for my taste, so I added a little of my Waverly chalk paint in the color Truffle to give it a more weathered look. I also dry brushed over the white letters so that they look aged. I really loved how cute this project turned out. For my second project, I decided to give this candle holder mason jar from the Dollar Tree an elevated look, starting with a quick paint makeover. I used a Fresh Earth and caramel candy mixture from my first project since I had a lot of it left over. I forgot to mention that I had watered down this mixture a little so that it would be more transparent when applying it to the wood, so I had to give the metal part of my mason jar a couple of coats. I also used Waverly chalk paint in the color Truffle to give it a rusty and worn look. I love doing transformations like this because it really makes each piece so uniquely beautiful. As part of my original idea, I needed to elevate my mason jar, so I created a rustic looking platform out of the tumbling tower blocks that you can find at the Dollar Tree. And I just wanted to pop in and take this opportunity to say thank you so much to all of my subscribers. I was a nervous wreck when I started my channel about 5 months ago, and I decided to just put that aside and focus more on being a resource and a source of inspiration for other beginner DIYers. I never dreamed in such a short period of time, and I am beyond grateful that our community has already grown to almost 500 subscribers. I am extremely grateful to each and every one of you for being a part of that growth. I really look forward to continuing to get to know you all and for everything that is still to come. Thank you again, and let's get back to it. I used my hot glue gun to adhere the wood blocks together, but you can certainly use wood glue or any other glue of your preference for this piece. The hot glue is fast drying, which is a big reason I opted to use it. After my platform was complete, I painted it using the mixture from the original project. Then I used the Waverly chalk paint in the color Truffle to give it a weathered look, but it was then that I decided to also mix in the color Elephant and Ink, also by Waverly, to add layers to the weathered look I was going for. I don't normally use so many dark colors, but I was really loving where this was going, so I stayed the course to see how it would all turn out in the end. I added a little of the color Ink on the mason jar as well to add a little more contrast between the different browns. I set my mason jar aside briefly and began working on a complementary piece that I wanted to place alongside it. I used 3 scrap pieces of basswood that were already cut into circles and glued the 3 pieces together to create the body of a small pumpkin. Now I used this technique 2 other times, so stick around to see how you can use this in different decor pieces. I've left my favorite project for the end. I used my apple barrel caramel candy to paint the body of my pumpkin. Then I used the white, the country tan, and the antique gold to give it a weathered look. Once the paint was dry, I used some thin jute twine to outline the entire pumpkin. I recommend using some type of protector for your fingers when doing this because the twine was so thin that I managed to touch the hot glue every single time. My fingers have gotten used to it, but I definitely recommend for anyone who may be a little bit more sensitive to the heat to just wear some little protectors. I know that you can find some pink ones at the Dollar Tree. I actually have them, but I don't find them to be very comfortable. I find it a little hard to work with them, so I just make do without. To create the stem for my pumpkin, I twisted some of the jute twine around itself. I didn't use a specific measurement and had to cut it down to size, so just take a look at it and see what feels right for the look that you're going for. Once my small pumpkin was complete, I moved on to my larger pumpkin, which I bought from the Dollar Tree, and prepped it for paint by removing the bow and the glue that was stuck on the wood. I then used the color Antique Gold to paint the entire pumpkin. I forgot to paint the backside and did go back after, but I recommend painting it before you begin adding any embellishments to your piece. And similar to my smaller pumpkin, I gave it a weathered look by using different colored paints. For my larger pumpkin, I used a country tan first, the truffle, and the white. Since this was a much larger pumpkin, I used some nautical rope to do the outline. And my friends, this one was so much easier to do, and I absolutely loved the way it looked. Now if you feel you're getting value from this video, please show me some love by giving it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already subscribed, I invite you to do so today. And don't forget to hit that notification bell to make sure that you don't miss any of my weekly videos. I post a new project every Sunday and you won't want to miss it. I also used more of the nautical rope to create a more natural feeling trunk rather than just painting it in. When I reached this step, I noticed that I hadn't actually added the nautical rope to the outside trim of the pumpkin, so I did add it here, only I really wish that I had considered painting the back first because that would have still made it easier. But in any case, if you forgot to paint the back before you get to this part, you still have some time to paint it, just as long as you do it before the nautical rope. Otherwise, you just have to make sure that you're careful about painting the edges. I used some tumbling tower blocks to create a stand for my larger pumpkin, and now it was time to put it all together. I used some of the straw from the straw bale I bought at Joann's and used in last week's project and glued it to the bottom of the larger pumpkin. Then I attached my smaller pumpkin to the bottom right. For the bow, I cut down a piece of brown burlap that I had left over from a prior Walmart purchase. I fringed the end to make it more rustic looking. Then I added some leaves to the top for a pop of color. The last touch on the mason jar was a little bit of jute twine, and that was it. For my third project, I use a wood blank from the Dollar Tree. These are really great to have handy because you can make so many custom projects with them. To prep it for paint, I simply removed the jute twine that it came with. And to make the most of the paint that I still had left, I used the Fresh Earth and Caramel Candy mixture for the base color of this wood piece. Then, you guessed it, I used the color truffle to give it a more rustic and weathered look, and I also added some of the antique gold for a pop of color. This time I used some of the leftover wooden coasters from one of my earlier projects to create my pumpkin. I'll be sure to leave a link to that one below as well. I decided to use a burnt orange for this pumpkin, and I used the colors Spice Pumpkin, Antique Gold, and a Waverly chalk paint in the color Moss to give it a rustic look. Once the paint dried, I used a thicker jute rope that I had left over from a prior project to outline my pumpkin. I also used the same jute rope to create a stringy little trunk at the top of the pumpkin because I wanted it to mimic the intertwining of the branches that made up my wreath. And once that was complete, I grabbed my pumpkin and glued it to my wood blank. Next, I grabbed the wreath I had purchased at Joann's for 75% off and added some leaves to it from the fall picks I had purchased at the Dollar Tree. I wanted to keep the focus on the branches because I have just really found them to be so beautiful. Then I strung some of the jute twine through my wood blank, and while doing so, I remembered that I had a windmill welcome sign that I had bought a few months back at the Dollar Tree and could alter to use for this project. I did this by folding the part that said welcome back and forth until it came off. Then I painted it with the same fresh earth and caramel candy mixture, and added a berry garland to the wreath for small pops of color, and once the welcome sign was dried, I added some of the color ink to give it a more aged and rustic look. Then I cut out a piece of cardstock and glued it behind my welcome sign, and I glued that to my pumpkin. Then I just added a few more leaves and that was it. Alright my friends, if you're still with me, you've made it to my favorite project. Leave me a pumpkin emoji in the comment section, and if you feel you've learned something new today, let me know. I'm always excited to hear from you all. For this final project, I used the wooden coasters again and began cutting out 6 pieces of brown burlap ribbon. I then applied a generous amount of matte Mod Podge to the wooden coasters and placed the burlap on top. Then I added another generous amount of Mod Podge to the top of the burlap. Now the Mod Podge does dry clear, so don't worry if it looks like a white gooey mess. I let mine dry overnight and painted the opposite side the remainder of the Fresh Earth caramel candy mixture. I also painted the other 6 coasters in the color burnt orange. Using the truffle color, and since the back side of my pumpkins would be showing, I painted them all and gave the coasters covered in the burlap a weathered look on the back. I kept the others the burnt orange for contrast. Next it was time to cut the extra burlap off my pumpkin pieces. I originally started with the X-Acto knife, but the Mod Podge made it so stiff that it didn't really cut well. So instead I just used my scissors. These are my go-to scissors for just about everything, and they're great, but if you like a lighter pair of scissors, these won't be the best option as they are a little bit heavier. After that was complete, I glued my pieces together to create 4 different pumpkins. Then I outlined my pumpkin with the jute rope just like I did the other pumpkins in the prior project. To make my pumpkin trunks, I decided to use some leftover inner corks from a peeled cork project that I did several years ago. I always felt I could use them one day, and I guess I was right. I shaved off the bottom of the cork so that it would sit flush against the back of the pumpkins, and this is when it really all began to take shape. I used the fabric I removed from one of the Dollar Tree pumpkins in my last video and cut strips of fabric to use for my ribbon. I absolutely love this buffalo check print, and I decided to pair it using some lamb's ear leaves that I bought from the Hobby Lobby. To top it off, I glued clothespins to the front of each pumpkin and used some scrap cardstock to write a message on each. I also used the wired jute twine to make the little curly vine at the top of the pumpkin trunk. That to me was just the icing on the cake. I think these would look adorable on a table setting or just nicely displayed in your home. What do you think? Which one was your favorite project? So what did you guys think of today's project video? Do you think you might try one of them or all of the projects? Let me know in the comment section below. Also, if you happen to miss last week's video, no worries. I've gone ahead and added the link in the description box below, along with many of the items used in this video, so be sure to take a look at that. And before you go, be sure to take a look at these other videos that you may also enjoy. And until the next time, bye.